And welcome to another exciting episode of the Writing Through the Unknown. Uh, Having a little tongue tied moment here. But tonight, I am bringing a special episode to you all. I have with me tonight my co host from the B system, and also the fact that I am excited to have her on my show as I have been on her show. I think, what is it now? 3 times? Twice?
Oh,
No,
yes, because we
three.
did that thing with Stone.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
reciprocating. I love the collaboration, going on each other's and supporting each other's shows. And so with that, I am going to allow my guest to introduce themselves because I just don't know that I could do her bio justice because it was so long and lengthy. I'm just teasing her. As you can tell, we're great friends. So it is my pleasure to introduce you all to the one, the only amazing metaphysical inquisitor in the house, Auric Vibe.
Awesome sauce. Yeah. So one of the things that I came up with, I have a coffee, tea, and wine, but it's spelled with an H, WHINE, and live on YouTube on Saturdays, most Saturdays when I can, kind of manage that after a day at work or a week at work. But I started to do something as get ready for unfiltered and somewhat uncensored because it is YouTube. So that's that version of Auric Vibe, and my given name is Deb. But it's on coffee, tea, and wine, and it's kind of where I let it kind of happen throughout the week. I'll feel like I get downloads, something I start feeling passionate about, and I'll dictate into a phone that I've got on airplane 100% of the time. And it's where I kind of examine that at the end of the week and I explore what is questionable and unknown. And the best thing is keeping an open mind. I think that's key. And I think that's pretty much it. I mean, I have a day job. I am a qualified mental health professional. I have a master's certificate in as a life coach. I'm certified in Beyond Quantum Healing and adorned. Yeah, I might be an ordained minister. I don't know. It depends on whether I wear a hair clip or not. I don't know. But my degree is in psychology, and I kind of feel like that I'm a bridge. I'm a bridge between like a psychological, metaphysical, and physical worlds. I'm kind of trying to bring it all together to make it not necessarily palatable, but something that everybody can find useful in their life. That's as serious as I'm going to get it. This is my Friday. I'm not going to work for the rest of the week. It's mental health days. They give us those. Otherwise, everybody
And
would quit.
yeah, and I had to say that's how we actually met. Was we were talking and she's like, "You're into metaphysics?" I go, "Yeah, I was raised in it." She goes, "Can you come on my show and talk about it?" I was like, "Absolutely." So yeah, it's funny, and I gotta give you kudos because it is not an easy task to bridge the metaphysics with the mainstream people. That they just don't like it and they view it as some woo woo thing out there, and I'm like, it's not woo woo, and it actually is the original religion of the planet. When you think about it, metaphysics started with the ancient Greeks.
So I kind of take a little bit different perspective. Is that it may be more or less with this particular history that we've been given, or this particular timeline that we're on, is that it's almost like it's almost like it's not say it again how you said it, because I had something that pulled in off of that.
It's like the original religion of the
So yeah,
parent
so
is
it's like
in
the
Greek.
metaphysics and being that bridge, uh, it's not religion, it's spirituality.
Right.
So I think that
Philosophy.
even goes before the Greeks, and it's something that I f it really feels like something that we need to get necessarily back to, but reconnect to, because I don't even this is not Willy Wonka. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe we have to go forward to go back, something like that. You know what I mean? So it's like we have to
Right.
remember the past, but we have to keep moving forward in order for us to really fully engage what happened back there.
Could you imagine life though if we ran our lives like a Wonka elevator that can go left, right, diagonal, up, down, out of the building? I'm like, man, how much more fun would life be?
That happens when we go to sleep, right? That's something that's like as soon as we shut those eyes and lose that level of control, and you want to say lose that level of consciousness. Really, it's the level of control that we have over our consciousness. So I don't think we lose our consciousness. We might lose an awareness of this particular realm, but it's like we're actually connecting to our consciousness when we sleep. I think
Right.
we're accessing different aspects of self.
And
Just,
talking
just
about metaphysics and everything, there's so many like modalities out there that kind of fall under metaphysics. And I know in full transparency, when we were backstage before coming live, we're like, some topics let's keep to a minimum, and others we can flourish on. And so I want to take a moment though, and just because I even had to ask you what it was. And so I feel like for the benefit of those watching, we don't have to go into great detail about, but you mentioned beyond quantum healing. Can you give a brief explanation of what that is? Because some people like me was not aware of that.
Yeah, and I think most people know who, I almost said Diane Cannon.
Well, she might have been in another life.
Maybe no, it would have had to been die and come. You know what I mean? They were alive at the anyway. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, Dolores Cannon came up with the quantum healing techniques, and it was really it's like you're in a hypnosis state, but you have full awareness. So it's like a theta state. And one of the things that Dolores Cannon didn't like to do was, and she refused to do, was remote healing, which kind of blew my mind because if this is a quantum, hey, AZ, if it was a quantum healing system, then it transcends space, time, and dimension. And it has nothing to do whether that individual is there or not. I think her concern was that if something happened to that individual and you were in two different parts of the world, that you wouldn't be there to help that individual. So I think as a practitioner, it's your job to keep everybody safe, and make them help them realize that is a safe environment to process that in a vulnerable state, in that hypnosis state. So she didn't want to do that remotely, and Candace Goldman, I can't remember exactly her name. She came up. She used to work with Diane. Diane, see, I did it again. Dolores Cannon, and she developed a series of steps to make that happen. So you can do it remotely. And it's ultimately the same type of thing where there's a heart mind coherence and you both share in the experience, which is incredible when you do that. Um, and you have to find the right practitioner. I'm 100% convinced of that. If you don't have the right practitioner, it's going to be a problem. And it's up to the practitioner to really kind of identify that, because the individual might be so hungry to figure out, what's going on. For me, I don't know if it's necessarily a regression process, but it's a healing process. So a lot of people do relate it to something that is a regression, because that's how I kind of first looked at it. But really, it's something that should be a healing process. So, and it transcends space, dimension, and when you're healing yourself here, it has that ripple effect that's transdimensional. So that's what I liked about it, and I've gotten benefit from other people's healing and vice versa, because I don't think you can do it unless you've experienced it.
Right, and it makes sense a little bit about why she maybe doesn't want everyone on the first level to be doing remote, because even when I learned Reiki, you do Reiki 1, 2, 3, and then master just means you can teach. Doesn't mean you've reached some all high, mighty Reiki level, but Reiki 1, it's all hands on, in person. And if I'm remembering right, Reiki 2 is where they're like, now you can do it remote. And they teach you how to do it remote. So maybe that was her concern, is she didn't want everybody taking the first level of her technique and
No,
going, okay.
I think she honestly felt, and I've seen videos on it, where people have been led down a particular path and they had a negative reaction, and I don't remember exactly what happened to the individual that was in hypnosis that was going through the process, but it was something that she used as an example as to why you don't do this. You know, I'm not going to use that example. That would be mean, but um I think it's that kind of thing, and maybe being from a different generation, not seeing the benefits. I don't know if you can go deeper when you're in person. I kind of feel like you probably can. I personally have experienced Reiki from an individual that was in Wales, and I have had Reiki in the past or before that, and it was like, yeah, that was nice. It was very relaxing, but I didn't really feel like I came away with anything. This guy, as I sat in a chair, uh, went through each one of the chakras, and he didn't start at the top. He started at the root chakra, and he genuinely reacted to each one of those uh, areas of the chakra system, and you could see it in his physical. It was not acted, and then he says, "Okay, well, we can do some work here." And then he would talk, and he said one of the energies he worked with was Jesus Christ. So he would work and talk to his guides and work. Again, I'm in Michigan, he's in Wales somewhere, and I felt in my physical form that guy working on that specific chakra area. And I've never had that happen ever. Huge skeptic. And it was like, okay, now I'm a believer. And that's the hard part. We have to feel something or experiencing something ourselves in order to believe it. And that's the hard part of being human. And that's the hard part of keeping an open mind.
Right. And so, what was you're like, I don't want to necessarily say aha moment, but what was your moment where you started to realize things were not necessarily what they seemed, and kind of drew you into the metaphysical world?
Well, like a lot of people, I am not one of those individuals that had an awareness when I was 5 or 6 years old. I don't have any pre-birth memories, but most people can remember to 2020 and the shenanigans that went on there. And you have a lot more time on your hands, even though I was probably working 9 hours straight in a day from home, and it was hard work. The problem was is you I started watching, and this is through my one of my family members who is a staunch, very religious Christian had started opening me up to different individuals, and not going to name any names, but they are people that are still around. Some of them are and still very popular. But the thing is that I started making questions, and it just kind of opened up, and I realized that nothing, I mean, all at once, everything I was taught, everything I learned, and I was walking up the basement stairs with a basket of laundry thinking, what's going on? What is this place? What is this that I'm looking at? So it was probably, that would have probably been like 2021. So we're only talking 4 years, but I'm that individual that when I get into something, I'm at the deep end of the pool with no water wings, and I'm jumping in. That's me on everything.
Yeah, sometimes that's the way you got to do it, though, because one of the hardest things is, and I know this is going to sound awkward, but there's a fear to the unknown and a fear of this is not, something I can just go to a mainstream bookstore and get books on. And so, is this even real? And so, you've got to jump in and literally sink or swim with it. And so, kudos to you for having the courage to do that. And I mean, yeah. And the interesting thing about metaphysics, in my opinion, is whether you started studying it as a child, a teenager, an adult, a week ago, a day ago, a year ago, you're at the same level. Everybody gets the concepts, and you can engage and talk to people and understand, and that's where the growth comes from. It's not a, oh, this person has more information and they're making you do this or that to earn the rights to it. It's like, no, it's freely shared. And,
Mhm.
or at least in my opinion, that's the way it should be and has been for me. And so, yeah, I've taken courses to learn different techniques, and but the concepts itself though were freely shared. And so that's the thing that I think is the beautiful thing about metaphysics is nobody judges anybody based on where they are. They just say, "Oh, well, you're into this, so what's your thoughts on this?" And they just freely engage.
Yeah, and that is a big part of it. Unfortunately, with most mainstream people, they're looking for the letters, they're looking for the degree, they're looking for where did you get your degree from? And there's actually a metaphysical university that you can get a master's degree, and you're going to pay a lot of money for it, just like you do with all this other stuff. But again, like you said, all the information is freely available to us. The hard part is shedding off those scales that we have that prevent us from absorbing it and maybe taking a solid look at it, because not all of it's, I don't want us to use the word true, because I think that that's bantied about a little bit. It's whether it's
Has
gonna
been.
actually whether it actually works, because I don't think it's exactly the same for everybody. It's all about your perspective. It you know
Perspective and resonance.
eh,
And
you
by
can
resonance, I mean if it feels right to you, keep going with it.
you know what?
If
That
it
reminds me
doesn't,
of, that's from the 60s. If it feels good, do it. That has a sexual connotation to it, but that's what they said. And, okay, you wanna walk away with crabs, or do you wanna take a better look at what you're resonating with? So that's why I say I think we have to be, because there's so many there are so many charlatans out there right now that they're muddying the waters, and they may be at a lesser known level or they may be hugely popular, and it's all in between. But I think that that is something where we all need to have that discernment. That's super important right now.
Yeah,
Whether we, because I know people that are super religious, and they how much conviction can you have where people are creating these problems in the world because they feel it resonates. So yeah, and that's true too. Uh Properly, either risky to pay for healing, and why you learned it yourself and mastered. Exactly. All of that is free. And there was a guy I saw, of course, they placed a term on it where he's actually able to harness aspects. I don't think he understands it, but harnessed aspects of the ether and how he places his hands. And if he's aware of someone who needs that healing, he has some way of envisioning where that healing needs to go, and they monitored it. It was something I think that Greg Braden had on, and several other people. And I think there's truth intermingled with some of the other stuff that, like you said, I don't resonate with, and you could take the whole package, throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't do that. I take the package and pull out what fits and makes sense, and I still keep that on my shelf. And so something, what's missing, and I can look back and have pieced together a lot of things that are working. It's just working in everybody's aspect of what they're going to be able to accept and retain is going to be a little bit different given on where they're at, what their perspective is. Because
right.
I don't think people that hold too tightly to one belief system are really gonna, you know, be able to fully embrace who and what we are. I don't know. That's getting like
That's
really deep.
true. And I will say I have qualms when people will come up to me and they'll go, "Oh, I read your energy and I noticed you needed this, so I sent this to you." And I'm like, "I beg your pardon? One, why would you read my energy without my permission? And two, what made you think I needed your help?" And it's like I get kind of agitated about that because I'm like, that kind of feels almost like a violation.
It is. It's very
And
invasive.
I know people are trying to make a living, and it bugs me when I'll see someone and I'll accept a request because they have all these nice titles and their pictures and posts are all great. And then the first question is, "Hey, my spirits tell me you need a reading. Let's set up an appointment." And I'm like, block. Because I'm like, first of all, your spirits aren't talking to my spirits. And secondly, that is not the way to approach someone. And I'm like, those I will automatically, and I'm sorry I do this, but it's just how I am, is I will take those people and go, charlatan, and that's why I block. They could have the best of intentions, but the way they're approaching it, I'm like, nope, you just totally disresonated with me and not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's like a spiritual bully, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I don't, like you said, might not they don't have malintent. Maybe a little greed peppered in there, but
Yeah, I mean, it'd be different if, you were talking for like a few weeks, maybe a month, and you're like, "Man, this has been bugging me." And you're like, "Oh, hey, I do readings. Let me do a reading for you." That'd be different. But to go, "Hello, hey, I need to do a reading for you. Can we do it?" It's like, I just said hello. What makes you think I need a reading?
Yeah, that's kind of weird because I know that I would never do that. Um and like you said, it's a violation. I think it's an invasion of your privacy. I mean, not like today, that's not like a big deal because we're so invaded anyway. Uh, right? We're watched on
Oh yeah.
everything. I mean, we don't even need TVs or cameras. They can just use our Wi-Fi to spy on us. But do you really need somebody with I don't like to use them psychic abilities, but their abilities, their metaphysical abilities, if you will, are those used for spying? I mean, I've heard other people talk about, well, you listen to these different readings and they're saying, well, you have somebody spying on you. I was like, well, good luck with that, me bucko, because that's one of the things that you set up as a shield in your dailies is that's what you have to be. You have to shield yourself. I mean, even
Yeah.
Bible scripture tells you to put on the full armor.
Yeah,
That's what
and
it is.
I actually, it's funny, how you mention, being watched through programs and everything on like TV and stuff. I actually found myself thinking this morning as I was doing stuff, going, when TV first started, they would say the Ed Sullivan Show, Dick Van Dyke Show, the Mary Tyler Moore Show. Then all of a suddenly, when news started coming, it became, oh, let's watch this program. And it's like the verbiage changed. And I was
Mhm.
like, so it makes me wonder, was shows like Dick Van Dyke and Mary Tyler Moore, were they actually pure entertainment, or were those like the precursors and they realized they could get away with it and then change the verbiage?
Yeah, because I think a lot of if you go back in the history of even like advertising before television became very, very popular, it's it's something where they were throwing it out there with the radio broadcasting, and that's again another word. They're casting that out and it's broad, so it's
Right.
reaching a lot of people, and they would set you up. And I have, having a degree in psychology, there's actually I got a book like this thick on it says what is it? It's something about, how the mind works, but if you look at it from the inside out, it's really a book about how to manipulate people, how people get manipulated with the words, the look, the sounds, the music is a huge manipulator. And I'm not just talking about, the little more esoteric side of it with the frequency and, between, 432 and 440 that may or may not play into it. But the idea of creating that good feel can reel you in and with the good images. So we can get manipulated in a lot of different ways. That's why I say having something resonate with you, we all have to be very much aware of what that means and kind of break that down. And right away, it may not. I resonated, if you will, with the Bible. Not to say that it wasn't good for me at that given point in time and phase of my life, because I think it was. Had some experiences with that, with what I believe was a direct contact with a Christ figure, and it was very positive. So I think it's necessary to go through these different stages in our life to allow us or give us the opportunity to open up to a broader sense of who, like I said, who and what we are, broader sense of self.
Right. And one of the things too that I found interesting when I look into the past to see, how much were we being manipulated. One spot I think I found where I was like, I feel like we were being manipulated, but it's hard to like judge if we really were. And that was like silent movies, because you'd see the actors doing something and their mouths moving like they're talking, and then this card would come up with like 3 words, and you're like, I know the mouth moved more than 3 words. What is going on? That not why does that not match? And nobody ever noticed. And then I sit there and I look at it from the eyes of, did people not notice because they didn't care, because it was just entertainment and they didn't know better, and we're coming at it from the eyes of, we're aware of things not being what they always seem to be, and that's why we're noticing, wait a minute, they're saying way more than what's on that card, or they'll be saying less, and the card will have a whole paragraph, and it's like, what? How? This doesn't make sense. And it's like, no.
Yeah, I was a big fan of all of the old movies and had watched several documentaries about how the whole industry had started out in California, and actually it was bigger in New York City, and started out with a lot of the people coming in either from Europe, but more of them were kind of established in New York City on the stage from vaudeville. That's where a lot of those individuals came from. From the silence came from vaudeville if they weren't already out on that side of the country. So it was interesting that these, Charlie Chaplin came from England and he ended up in New York City. He did vaudeville. Same thing with Buster Keaton. He did all of that. But what did they have to do to get in front of that screen? I mean, we know the typical story, but we now know more about why that was established. Who were the people in that area that started, who had the money, who had the funding? So again, if you follow that money, we're getting into a different topic now. But they were the ones who were essentially grasping the greater population's attention with that. They got them entranced, literally. And that's where they got their news. Well, that's where they got the propagandized news of
Right.
the world.
I mean, even, Charlie Chaplin did the movie The Dictator. And it's like, everybody looks at it and laughs, and everything. But I was like, this was a really hard time. And we're making light of it. And yes, there is time where, you do need laughter to, otherwise you'll go freaking nuts and probably end yourself in the chaos of what's going on around you. But it's like, they forgot when to stop, and so everything started becoming, let's make fun of everything. And it's, to me, it's like I started looking at it and it's like, I don't know when, like, the news stopped being the news and became a complete 100% propaganda machine, because I would watch the news with my parents growing up, but then in the 90s when we were in the Persian Gulf War, they kept showing all the trauma and everything over there and everything, and I was at the airport and all these soldiers were sitting there laughing, cutting up, and like messing around. And I'm like, so I went over to thank them for their service, and I said, "Where are you guys off to?" And they go, "Oh, we're heading over to Iraq." And I'm like, "How are you so happy?" Because of everything. And they said, "Yeah, we don't understand what you guys are watching here. We get maybe one IED a month, if that, and the rest of the time we're at schools, building schools, helping the communities. That's what our majority of the time is." And I heard that, and that hit me so hard that I told my parents on that flight, I am no longer watching the news. If they're lying about that, what else are they lying about? And it's like that totally destroyed my faith and belief in the news media when the soldiers are like, I don't know what you're watching. That is not real.
Yep, and it's interesting that you bring that up because, again, it goes back to a personal experience and how the greater population can get easily brought into that, I call it MK altered state, where your thinking is altered, it's changed by that program. And ultimately, through the history of Hollywood, who were making those films for the theaters to show for people who couldn't afford that, what ended up happening is they were making flat out propaganda films for the United States, just like they did in any other country. So it's been from the very beginning that it's been a machine to control and manipulate the minds of whoever was going to be willing to watch. And there was actually a documentary I had seen, gosh, like well over 15 years ago. And it was about that original setup. And that's what they kind of wanted to use it for, was to present social ideas, more social openness. And actually it's a societal molding. It's like they're molding people in the direction that they want them to go, and their acceptance of different ideas, um, whether it's something towards war or against war, maybe both. Maybe they'd want to do both so they can fracture something within that society. Because I think that, even with Charlie Chaplin doing The Dictator, he did it in a satirical way. But again, it goes back to that machine allowing him to put that out, so they can, they kind of got to tell you what's going on before it happens. So, and
Well,
it's something that's repetitive. They don't just tell us once, but they tell it in a satirical way. So they, just like Gervais doing that whole thing. How many people laughed about that? Dude was telling the truth. Same thing with George Carlin. Everybody laughed
right.
at his stuff.
Well, and like people like Jeff Dunham and others will say, if I want to get the truth out there, I have to make it sound like a joke.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the censors will never allow it out there. And so
Yes.
it's like, it makes you have to sit back and think, what kind of world are we in that the truth has to be made a mockery to be shared? It's
Yeah.
like, how
It's a
far
very
have
twisted.
we fallen, so to speak?
Well, if you think about it, one of the stress relievers when people get under a lot of stress, they will laugh. You can say something that you would think would make somebody, like the guy slipping on the banana. I mean, that's everybody kind of laughs at that. But that guy slipped and fell and ended up on a hard sidewalk. So how do you think that guy feels about landing his backside and whatever? You know what I mean?
Right.
Boom, bang. People kind of laugh at that, and that's what it's meant to do. It's to make it light enough, but it's so light, unfortunately, that we don't realize that there was a possibility of injury and blah blah blah. I mean, and you can get it gets really kind of twisty and deep. Um, that's how we kind of is an off gas of stress too. So if you're going to stress people out, you make them laugh so they can laugh it off. And then now we can do some more. And then, you know what I mean? And then we can get them
I
traumatized
do.
again and
And
make them laugh. And then they gas it off.
And what kind of makes me laugh a little bit is when you hear like the TV censors, the people who are censoring TV shows, and they're like, oh, we can't have this on because it shows this person bleeding, but yet you can watch Three Stooges where they're poking each other in the eyes, hitting each other, and it's like, wait a minute, they're being abused more than that person having a little prick of blood, but that's okay. But this person, no, we can't show that. Wait, what?
Well,
And
they
it's
even
just
they
funny
even took off
how
the
they determine
cartoons.
what is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they even took off all those cartoons, the Tom and Jerry, the Bugs Bunny. And I mean, I saw those so many times, and they were not, if you look at those old cartoons, if they were unedited, they were not. Those were shown again in the movie theaters as entertainment for the adults. They were not meant for kids. Those cartoons that you went and saw were not meant for children. And I don't know if
Yeah.
they're real or not, but there's some really dark stuff in with Mickey Mouse and some of that kind of stuff. You got to go on your own rabbit hole for that one. Sorry about that, but because that's kind of kind of a thing.
Oh yeah, no kidding. And I'm like, and I was laughing today when I read a report, talking about Disney and those, the rabbit hole that they went down. I found myself kind of proud of humanity a little bit when I read they had to pull back or maybe not even release a movie. I think it was Snow White or something. They were making a live movie, and the people said there's too much woke propaganda in it, so we ain't watching it. And we're protesting it. And so Disney had to shelve or delay the release of the movie. And I'm like, way to go, people, because I think it's time to, you know, time to stand up and say, you may be a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, but your conglomerate needs us. So you really don't have the power. We, the viewers, have the power. And if we're not going to watch that movie, you're going to lose your business if you keep it up because you need us to keep your money flow coming in. And so that's where I was like, I was looking at that and going, thank you, people, for standing up and saying, enough is enough. We're not going to take it and tolerate it anymore. It's a new world now, so to speak, and we're making it the way we want to make it. No longer what they tell us it needs to look like.
Yeah, and I think too with that whole company that you just mentioned was the subliminals that from the beginning that have been in there that people don't notice or didn't notice. Even, back to into the 90s. I'm not going to name any of the films, but if you have any of them in there and you don't watch the movie and don't get engrossed in the story, and you look at the artwork and you look at some of the things that were in there, and I don't know if the artists realized what they were drawing, but there's a lot of inappropriate things for children. It would be something that would be, for over 18 if they realized that was in there. So that's kind of the hard part too, is the subliminal stuff that you don't even realize what you've seen. Um, and I know it's affected some of the people in the that I know of that don't have a fully functioning cognitive awareness, and they were affected by it. Not everybody's going to be. Everybody's going to be affected a little bit different. So, and because that goes with your personality and your character and all that as to because I watched Disney as a kid. I wasn't interested in a lot of the stuff in school, and now they're all telling us it was all lies anyway. So hey, bonus. got crap grades in high school, but who cares? You always got good grades and you believed it all. Ha! You know, I mean, that kind of stuff. So,
Right.
I mean, you know, and two, it kind of makes me laugh. I saw this comedian thing that came up in one of the reels I was watching, and he said people get offended, you know, especially in the United States. They're less so in Britain, but people get offended. He says, why are you, well, I'm offended by that. And it's like, so you're offended. Didn't do anything. You're physically not injured. And if you were injured, you did it to yourself because it's your perspective. And why are you offended? I didn't touch you. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like
Right.
we've become hypersensitive to some of the things people say and do. Now they have
And
something called microaggressions. So look up for that, right?
and what I find interesting is everybody is taking a trend now of growing up in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, so to speak. Everything we were shown was the good may struggle, but in the end they're going to overcome. They're the ones that you're supposed to follow. They're the role models. Now we're starting to get programs to where it's like, well, but you misunderstood the hardships that the villains had to deal with, and look at what happened, and look how the good guys made the villains who they were. And I'm like, why are we getting sympathetic to the villains now? What is going on that it's like, I mean, to the point to where somebody was making a like comic deal about Batman and said, well, when you look at Gotham, they have all these toxic tanks that have no lids, catwalks over them. So, you're just asking for someone to fall in and become a villain. Where's the cap for this? Where's the common sense? And it's like, it's funny, looking at that,
Where's
on the
OSHA when you
left.
need him, right?
Yeah. But it's like, we sit there and I was like watching like, Broadway. And even like, I have no problem with like Wicked telling the story of, what happened to cause the Wizard of Oz. But the issue I have is the whole play focuses on, oh, the Wicked Witch was green and was abandoned, and everybody picked on her at school, but the popular girl was really friends with her, but only when people weren't looking. And when people were looking, she would tease her. And so look at all the stuff that made her so wicked. And I'm like, all that stuff didn't make her wicked because, and I'm going to go a little metaphysical here, so hold on. But she had the choice, being the Wicked Witch, to say, you know what? I've had enough of you guys teasing me. So what? My skin color is green. That doesn't make me wicked. And had all these opportunities to do good. But what did she do? She chose to go hide and take and say, you guys picked on me. You need to pay. And became wicked. It was her choice.
Mm-hmm. Just like
Nobody made
Maleficent.
that choice for her.
Wasn't that the premise of the movie Maleficent or
Yeah,
whatever her name was?
Maleficent. Yeah,
Yeah, so I mean that's the same idea though. And it's
yeah.
almost like you're being twisted into a perspective and a position to feel like I don't want to really say the ends justify the means, but it's the means justify the end. So she was experiencing these things and like you said, made the choice to go on one path rather than the other. And to me, that's like, if you're really open, you're going to see dumb wench had all those abilities and she didn't use them to help society. And what kind of heroine would she have been?
Exactly. I mean,
Maybe what would that have looked like? Why couldn't they explore that? You
right.
know?
I mean, because I'm gonna pull a little personal experience, and my childhood growing up was not all rosy and walking on clouds and everything great. I overcame a lot, and my first reaction is god, I wish I could get a time machine so I could go back and prevent this from happening, because this really sucks, and this really never should have happened, and all of that. And then finally I had a aha moment where I sat there and said, you know what? As crappy as some of the stuff I went through was, it made me who I am now. So if I went back and altered that, what would I be now? And so I, in turn, was like, I no longer say I want to go in the past and change this, or have a time machine to go and correct this event and make it more rosy than what it was, because I realized it forged me into what I am now. And I made the choice to use what I went through to say, look, you're not alone out there. I went through that. Look at where I am. I'm doing shows to help people. I'm bringing awareness to thoughts and ideas that probably most people have never heard of in their life and would have no interest in. And because I made the choice, like you're saying, to go the better route, all these opportunities are out there and people are getting exposed to things they may never have been exposed to. And I'm not saying I'm the only voice, don't misquote me into that, but what I'm saying is I could have easily gone the dark path and went vengeful and made people pay it. But what did that serve? What would that serve? And so that's what I'm meaning is, that's why we're saying, the choices that we make are our own. Nobody makes us make those choices. It's something we decide. Society didn't forge us. I mean, I grew up watching He-Man, She-Ra, Voltron, you name it, G.I. Joe, people shooting at each other, beating each other up, and yes, only the robots were ever killed in programs. No humans were actually ever killed. They may get injured, but and the next week be totally fine. But that violence didn't forge me into a violent person.
Unless you
And
watch Star Trek and you were wearing that red shirt. Bad choice of shirt tonight.
I know,
The original Star Trek, dude, don't wear the red shirt.
I know. And I love watching the memes where they put the red shirts of Star Trek against the stormtroopers, because the stormtroopers never hit anything.
Yes.
But until the new trilogy, they actually started hitting stuff. It was like, whoa, wait a minute, we got a new breed of troopers here. But in the end, we're being taught we're not responsible for our choices. It's blaming somebody else. And that is not gonna help anybody and help. And that's where metaphysics comes in, is it's like you can't sit there and, being metaphysical, I can't say, well, Hasbro, bringing out these violent cartoons, corrupted me and made me this and that, and I got into trouble because I watched this and that. It never happened. It didn't work that way. It's something, there are other factors, and I think people are too quick, too easy to blame one thing so they don't have to take responsibility. And that is what I'm thinking is what's great about what's happening now is the responsibility is returning to where it belongs, to the self.
Yeah, the
And
victimhood's got to
sorry
stop.
for the rant, but just felt
No,
like I needed to
seriously, the
get that out.
victimhood's got to stop. The
Yeah.
victimhood is a big part of this nanny state that we're in right now. Sorry, I don't want to get too deep into that. But it's definitely something that I've tried to mention. I know the one thing that you put up before you put up metaphysical inquisitor. What did you put up there? Working for the man or something?
Oh yeah.
Well, because, I work for the county and I kind of feel like, well, I have those kind of values instilled into me by my parents that, if you make that commitment, you make that commitment. If I'm going to play your game, I have to play by your rules. So I kind of feel like that's what I have to try and do to the best of my ability. It gets to the point where, um, it gets more and more difficult to do that because your personal perspective becomes out of line with that. I mean, I I don't even I have to be careful what I say. I guess that whole victimhood is part of it's just permeated through the whole system.
Yeah.
It's in the medical system, it's in the psych system, it's in everything that you can think of and just our society of how housing and we set up all these different, and it's great, people do have problems where they don't have a roof over their head and they do need that temporary assistance, but it's gotten so crazy. Hey, Stone, it's getting so crazy that those numbers have grown. It's that idea of give them a fish or teach them how to fish. Yes,
Right.
exactly. But and the hard part about self-sabotage, you don't realize you're doing it. you don't
Well,
you
not
don't
only do we
realize you're
not
doing
realize
it.
we're yeah, not only do we not realize we're doing it, but we don't see it that way.
Correct.
It's
We
like,
It's an entitlement. And even the things that, when you go in and say, I am down and out, or I don't have a really great paying job. I need some sort of medical assistance because I have to go to the doctor because I have this medical problem. So I'm going to sign up for medical assistance that's here in my area. And when you go into that community center and you say, I need to sign up for this, you talk to somebody who is an entitlements agent, representative, expert, whatever it is, but they are part of a department that's called entitlements. That's ultimately goes up to, what is it, Robert Kennedy for the Health and
he's in
Human
charge of the
Services.
health.
That
Yeah.
those are called entitlements. I am entitled to this coverage because I am in this state. But it creates that, you know, how do I get out of that now? Give me a step system to get out of it. And that's the problem. You have either this or you have that. And there need to be a step system to get out of that.
Yeah.
Hey,
Hey,
Phoenix.
Phoenix. And
Yeah.
one thing too that I think is a disservice, and this is my personal opinion, so take it as it is. But I have gone through programs of supposed spiritual growth, and I'll always hear them say, "Oh, you have this, addiction to this or that. You're always going to have that. That is going to be a constant fight." And I have so much in me that it's like I want to slap that person and go, how can you tell somebody you are always going to have that? Because how do you grow from that? There is no growth going to come out of being told you're always going to have this. You're never going to be free of it. And to me, I'm like, that is either one, the worst thing to say to an addict, or two, I don't believe that for a second. And I feel like if you do shadow work, which is metaphysical, that you can figure out what's causing the addiction, work on it, change it. Yes, it may not totally disappear, but you're not going to react to it, and you're not going to be a constant watching over your shoulder, so to speak, for when is it going to strike. And so you have hope in your life. And in that hope, maybe you can get so much more positive things in your life that the addiction just fades away and disappears. But if you're told you always are going to have it, what's the point?
Once an addict, always an addict. Didn't you know that? It's step
And
1 and 12 steps. It's a brain disease and etc. So I think that that's going to start flipping the other way. I hope, and that is it can be a chemical disruption when your brain chemistry is altered by some medications or drugs. That can be something that's going to be difficult to flip, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. And I don't know, when you said that you wanted to go back and slap him, I immediately thought of Mo, and it's like, you just have to be quick. You just have to be
yeah,
quick. Just block it. Yes.
yeah,
My mother used to tell me, I'm addicted to food. It's like, Ma, you have to eat. Come on.
yeah. I'm like, there's
Unless
nothing
you
wrong
want to
with
be a
heavy.
breatharian.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. It's like, and it's interesting you bring up food because it's like they tell us you have to eat. When I grew up, it was 3 meals a day. Couldn't miss breakfast. That was the most important food meal of the day. And then it became, well, you should have 5 meals a day. Then it became, well, you should have every couple hours a light snack. And it's like, and I'll quote, and I'll jokingly say, who's deciding this? The egg people, when you couldn't have the white of the egg, then it became you couldn't have the yellow of the egg. And I'm surprised they even allow you to have the egg anymore.
They're
But,
working on it. They're working on it.
I mean, metaphysically, the first premise that we learn is everyone is on their own distinct path. Nothing is identical to anybody else. I mean, you can have similar paths, similar incidents, but they're never identical. So why do we say everyone has to eat so many meals, or has to eat this, has to eat that? And it annoys me a little bit to hear that and be judged by that, because I'm like, because it doesn't work for you doesn't mean it doesn't work for me. And so
Right.
don't judge me based on your results.
And it's not even just the results, it's whatever needs that you are having. I mean, I know some people that they are so driven by that schedule that they have to take their break and they have to take their lunch, and they get really cranky because that's part of their system, their programming. But I know I see food and I eat it.
Yeah. I'll just catching up with her because I was on another rant.
But no, I mean, and for me, just how I work, I'll might have something light in the morning. Um, and if my head is in work, it's on work, and that's all I'm gonna do. What it's more difficult to stop and have a break, because takes like, it makes a mind shift for me, because my head wants to stay at work because I got things to do. So I have to get there. I have to do what I need to do. And then I might take a micro break. It's called going to the toilet. You just take those micro breaks throughout the day. But what really is hard, like today, was an extremely difficult day. Um, and it started at a little after 7, and it didn't stop till I left at 4:30. And I didn't even really have much of a chance to drink water. I think I maybe got like 4 ounces of water, and maybe like a half a cup of good. I bring my own coffee. I don't my filtered water, my stuff in my stuff. So, that thing is that you have that little routine. So being disrupted from that, of not being able to finish my coffee, in the cup, it was like half, it was only half empty. So I didn't get the coffee, I didn't get the water. And as I'm driving home, I'm going, I have a wow, I'm noticing I have this blazing freaking headache. Why? It's like, oh my gosh, I didn't have anything to drink. I don't care about the food, but I didn't have anything to drink. So I have my bag. I go to grab my bag. I take 2 sips out of that. I put it back in my bag because I had the cup of coffee sitting in there that was not finished and sitting there, and then somebody pulls out on me. So I had to slam on my brakes. My purse went flying onto the floor. My biggest thing was, dag nabbit, how long do I have to get home before I can grab some water? Because now my water is all the way on the floor and I can't reach it. It's like, what are you trying to tell me now? Are you mad at me? Is that like a slap at the back of my head telling me you should have had your water today? But you just kind of, your body gets used to it. And I think your routine, and when that routine gets disrupted. So for those people that overindulge in alcohol and you have that hangover, guess what that is? That's dehydration, plain and simple. So if you know how to flush out what's in there and get rehydrated, that headache will go away. No magic trick. It's strictly that you're dehydrated.
That's
And I
probably
felt
why.
like that. It's like, oh my gosh, from my youth, this was a hangover.
Yeah, which is probably why coffee became the cure for the hangover, because you're hydrating the body.
Yes, and the coffee's not a diuretic. It's got a lot of oil in it, and you have to drink a whole heck of a lot of coffee to make that happen. And it's more stress on your kidneys, I think, than anything. Not medical advice, just my personal experience. That's the disclaimer.
Uh, I'm having fun. This is the first time I've done a show where I've really had to put a lot of disclaimers in.
That'd be me. Yeah, pretty
Uh,
much. Pretty much, yeah.
yeah,
But
and
yeah, I mean, I think people just need to reconnect to self. It feels like if I look at what I was like even 5 years ago, I'm a completely different human. 10 years ago, definitely, definitely a different.
yeah,
I had just gotten back to the United States in 2014. I was living in New Zealand, so it was definitely a big change. So making the decisions that we make and being open-minded without losing our footing, that's gonna probably be the biggest struggle for everybody in the
and
coming 5, 6 years.
yeah, and I'm gonna kind of sidestep for a second because I think it's kind of funny how the universe works, that you and I were having conversations of like metaphysics and different concepts, and I was asked in November to join Beast System, which is Emily Menshouse's political conspiracy theory show. And I mentioned when we began that we're both on it, and she was, asking for who we think would come on, and could, have some fun with the show and add new perspectives, and everything, like most hosts do. And it was kind of funny when I was like thinking about it. I was like, I don't know that I know anybody who's really into political conspiracy theories. And I'm like, I know a couple people who are conspiracy theory. I don't know about political. And I put it out there, and when you responded, it was like, I was like, huh, I'm not quite so sure I would have went there on my own and been like, yeah, but I was like, and being on that show, I think it's funny how we sit there and we're like watching something and going, look at this, look at that. What, how did nobody notice this? How did nobody notice that? And it's kind of funny how it's like we're sitting there and it's like everything seems so obvious to us and going, "Oh my god, look at this." And we have so much fun just like poking fun at these ideas, but again, we're using that humor to stick in people's minds, "Hey, now that you're laughing about this, it's in there. So when you see this again, you're gonna not be so. It's not gonna be so funny because you're gonna be like, wait a second. It's that old adage. It was funny the first time, not so much the second time."
I especially like the little comments though about, you know, because I don't know. I know the names. I might know some of what they are known for, but the details that Emily has on these individuals because she's so into it, I learn a lot, and that's one of the reasons why I did it. Because 'cause I've never been into politics, but I kinda, I guess I don't wanna use the word fringe, but basically on the edge, kinda watching from a distance and trying to take it in, and of course, when my dad was alive, I relied a lot on him because I trusted his opinion, and his opinion was always very different from what you might consider to be a mainstream back in the day. Because he's been gone this year, in the fall. It'll be 20 years. So it's been a rough road to kind of figure out which way is up as far as that side of life, the politicking and all that. So to hear Emily talk about some of this stuff, and then when she starts saying these things, I think you saw that whole thing with, Nancy Pelosi, and we had watched that one
Oh yeah,
speech, and she was making the funny lip faces like, "What the hell is wrong with that woman?" And she had the cane, and she's going, "Oh, yeah, she had vodka in that cane." And I said, "Not anymore." Because I mean, the poor lady, I mean, she just looked like she was unstable. So, I mean, there's funny little things that you kind of pick up, but again, you have to go back to what are they allowing you to see? And you can't tell me those individuals aren't aware that they're being watched. I mean, granted, especially her, she was probably still, wearing the bearskin when she started in politics, but, back in the caveman days, it's still that whole idea of they're letting you see what they want you to see. They're switching those cameras around and you're listening to what they want you to hear. So I kind of take a lot of that stuff with a grain of salt. But listening to Emily, she puts so much context in all these people. And I had mentioned it to someone at work, and I said, I never realized they called that, what is it, Shifty Shift? I never realized
yeah,
they called him pencil neck. She goes, I said, they call that one guy pencil neck. She goes, oh, yeah, that'd be Shift. And it's like, oh, okay.
yeah.
So I think that that's kind of like adding to the whole, and I think there's a lot of woo involved. So to getting back to maybe halfway step over back to metaphysical, that these individuals, they also have that side of them, but are maybe yes, maybe no, are more aware of their impact. on others, or are they that greedy?
Well, it could be that they're that greedy, and it could also be they've never been held accountable. So why would they even care? And now all of a suddenly we're having someone who's there that's saying, wait a minute, you said this. That's not allowed. You're now gonna, be accountable. And they're like, wait, what? What do you mean we're accountable? We're above the law. And it's like, nope, the law has been returned. And is like the old saying, the law's gonna will smack you down if you don't be careful.
Yeah, they are
And
not the crew. They are not the crew that's going to bend over and say, "Thank you, sir. May I have another?" That's not them.
yeah, they're more like the crew of going, well, what do you mean? I can't have this, pearly shoe because this doesn't match my orange outfit. So it's like, yeah. And I mean, it's just, and I like how a lot of people are sitting there and saying, it's like, the way we can do it without going insane is to go grab your popcorn. You're watching a movie. And it's like when you put it in that context and you see these people doing this, it's like your mind goes, oh my God, I'm actually seeing them for what they are, but not realizing I've become able to see them for what they are because your mind automatically goes, "Oh, they're playing a role." Well, look at the role they're playing. This is so stupid. How could they ever think they'd get away with that? And it's like you're all of a sudden going, "Wait a minute. When did I start thinking like this?" And so I think it's like you're saying is there's some woo woo going on in the movie, so to speak, lingo world that's opening people's eyes and minds. And that's where now all of a sudden people are like, we're tired of watching this. We're canceling this and we're getting something else.
Yeah, and that's the danger of the popcorn. The popcorn, I think, had its place for a time to get you to sit down and watch. But I think we are on the crest of, if not, hopefully not over the crust of having to say, okay, I know this is a movie. Let's not sit back and eat the popcorn. Let's get off our tuchus and go out and do something about it. What can I do about it? So I think that's the hard part because people are now saying, well, I can't do anything about what can I do? I can't fight against this department or that department, and I can't fight against this group or that group. So again, that you have to find your grounding and remember who you are
Yeah.
and what you can do. I mean, if anybody were to tell me, even I think I started my YouTube channel maybe 3 years ago, and started posting things in earnest 2 years ago. But the thing is that, well, I don't have anything relevant to say, and it's like, what the hell? I'll just throw something out there. It's like throwing something out, seeing what sticks, and if there's a fan in the way, you better duck quick. So, you just kind of try and make it work. You figure out what works and what doesn't, and that's where, again, I'm going to go back to discernment, and that's the development of discernment, of figuring that out, and how you're going to develop your discernment is reconnecting to who you are, and that's going to be very individual. That's
Right.
that's going to be a very individual process.
And I love your comment about, people watching and being like, how can I do anything? What can I do? And the second you brought that up, I was like, how funny that goes right back to the beginning of the show when I said Disney, is getting hit by people standing up. And it's like, that's all we have to do. People, have lost their history of themselves and how powerful they are, and they're just having a voice. You don't
Can I
have to
change? Can
go
I
over.
change your in the world of pronouns rather than saying how powerful they are? It's very appropriate for us to say how powerful we are, because as a collective, that's the only way we're going to get through this successfully, is to reconnect not just with ourselves. We need to connect to each other. And that's why this is so outside my comfort zone. You have no idea.
Well, and it's
You
funny
know, I
because
don't have a social life. This is what I do. I come in and they go, "Oh, are you going to have a couple of days off of work?" And I was like, I try not to share stuff about me personally at work. It's like, yeah, I'm going to go hang out with some online friends. Hi, everybody. Hope you're having a good evening. So,
yeah,
it's that kind of thing that, you have to figure out what's going to work for you. This is not a comfortable thing,
yeah,
but I feel it's important enough that I have to put that aspect of fear. And that's what keeps us all from success is
yeah.
fear.
And where I was going with my comment, and I appreciate the we, because I don't think about that sometimes when I'm talking, is the Revolutionary War. Whether we want it or not, that's up for debate, and you can research that if you want, if you really want to go down that rabbit hole. But it was a minority that overthrew the empire. They united a small amount of people who not only defied the empire, they also defied neighbors. I mean, it literally was the most dangerous time to stand up and protest and to, try and empower yourself, because you had neighbors that were spies. So you could literally trust no one except the person next to you. And I think that's where the brotherhood of the soldiers came in, was from that aspect of them dealing with, you're marching along, you don't know whose house you're marching by. Are they sending word to the army up ahead going, hey, you got a force of so many coming and you're in for the fight of your life because you just been betrayed? But and the other thing is, the Civil War was, and I find it interesting that we had to have Nicolas Cage bring this to attention, that until the Civil War, everybody would say America. But after the Civil War, we became the United States of America. We actually identified ourselves as one people, one nation, not individual sects. And what I mean by that is like the Irish community, the German community, the Polish community. It was, you were American. And then that even got broken down. And what I find interesting, being the historian that I am, and yeah, I have a history degree, but when I would see during the 2020 and all that, when they were going after statues and everything, they were trying to erase the history that showed how powerful an individual can be, under the guise of saying, "Oh, we need to get rid of this because this person was an enslaver." And they were like, no, that person stood up against slavery. You don't even know what statues you're taking down." And to me, that's where their entire argument fell apart, when they just started vandalizing to vandalize. I was like, if you're gonna take down, say, Confederate generals, statues, I could go, yeah, they fought for slavery. Even though not every general believed in slavery, they were fighting more for state rights and the fact that they didn't like one government telling them what they can do in their homes. But people don't want to hear that. They want to hear, oh, the Civil War was fought over slavery and was meant to free these people. Little do they know, the Revolutionary War was even to fight for their freedom. But certain people didn't want it, couldn't abide by it. So, to get the we factor, you had to make concessions, compromises. And I was shocked and confirmed this for myself when I heard the first case of a person being referred to as a slave was a black man in court in the 1800s. They did it to themselves, so to speak. And I know, people aren't going to like hearing that, but it's actually is in record that it was a black man who said, this person is my property. They're my slave. It wasn't the whites that started it.
Yeah, I think there's documentation, is there not, of the groups that made a lot of that money and the transporting and really the human trafficking, if you think about it, from those African nations was, they were coerced into those situations, but they're not gonna trust a white person. They're gonna
No.
trust somebody onto those ships, or they're gonna be absconded onto those craft back to the States to do the work. And I don't think that that has stopped. I mean, we're gonna go down a whole 'nother rabbit hole with that
Yeah,
because it
no,
still
I know.
goes on today, and I think that that's, again, that's, you could go back to your news and the propagandizing of the people and the programming of what's important and what's not. And it's kind of important to remember, again, that unification, irrespective of what you see in the mirror or what you see when you look at your friend, your comrade, or your coworker, that it's all the same. We're all connected. We may have different experiences and different accents and different heights and all that kind of madness. So what you see and what they see, it's all still one. And the illusion of the separation is really the biggest factor, if you want to get back to the woo, of that separation that begins that division and derision of, I believe that there are this people groups or that gender and this, this, that, and the other. I mean, you can put every societal thing that's been brought up, anything you can divide. They can't even divide the rainbow. If they talk about the rainbow, there are lines between those colors. They can look at it as gradient, but I think when you put it under a microscope, if you could see that there is a line between those colors. That's what they're telling us. I have not seen that personally, but when you step back, it's gradient. So we need to kind of step back and realize we're gradient. We're all one, and we're all part of this thing we call society, and we have different experiences, blah, 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 blah. So what I'm kind of trying to make the point of, irrespective of your beginnings, we're all going to end up the same. We're all the same
Right.
now, but we're going to end up in exactly the same place.
And one thing I'll throw out, and we're getting close to the end here for this episode. We'll have to continue with another part, but talking about the propaganda machine, one thing that they are really good at is taking symbols that are of high energy and positivity and making you believe something else. One example, the swastika is a Buddhist healing symbol and high energy symbol, but Nazi Germany and the Socialist Party made it into an evil symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Then you go and, in my opinion, you look at the rainbow. The rainbow used to be the symbol of beauty and of nature, and now uh, I know I'm probably going to get hit for this, and this is my opinion again. Disclaimer: the Pride movement took that symbol and made it total garbage, and destroyed the beauty of it. And I'm like, to me, I feel like it's wrong that we allow this to happen. And, I have no problem with people being what they want to be, who they want to be. But if you have to shove it down someone's throat that's not you, is that really who you are? Is that really what you believe? Because to me, it seems like you're going through an awful lot to try and prove to yourself that's who you are by having to have others the same way. And that has never, ever worked in the history of this planet. I mean,
No.
look at the Crusades, those failed. Religions have borderline collapsed over these events. And it's just funny to watch it replay over and over in different mannerisms. And so, yeah, I mean, we have to watch and see, is what we're seeing something that's really happening, or is it propaganda that's made to make us think one thing over another, and we're being forced into accepting something that was never ever something that was ever in question.
Okay, you used a really interesting word, and that's the word forced, because people can say that, well, I didn't know, even though you were given this video evidence and there was, yes, it was delivered in kind of a subtle way that maybe you looked at something. Um, it's always a choice for us to take a step back and accept something or not accept something. That's why I say we have to be careful with what we say we resonate with. And you could accept it. Please examine it, because I think there's going to be more deception with even what they're calling, revealings and exposure and revelation, whatever word you want to use on it. The only positive from, again, this would be my opinion, for these things that we might see as negative, is possibly to raise awareness of those who are less in tune with what's going on. It's like the whole popcorn thing. We can sit there look back and see all these people. It's like, yeah, I knew all this stuff was going to happen. Where were you 5 years ago? So, I think if you wanted to kind of wrap things up, one of the things that I was hoping to be able to do, and hopefully there are enough people that are interested and willing to connect. But if you're ready for an open discussion and not just pointing out problems, and you're more interested in working out maybe a viable, a safe, and practical solutions, I mean, you can reach out to me. Um, because it doesn't really matter what the subject is, whether it's health or paranormal experiences. I don't care what it is. Medicine, ET, politics, but Bigfoot, money. I don't care, because I think we all have a voice as a collective, and we need to be that collective so we can make that positive change. And not only in our own personal realm, in our own personal life, community, but this will impact everything, not just into this wacky world we're all traveling through, but this is getting back even more into the woo. This has a multi-dimensional effect on everything, because if you have any awareness of you are something outside of this vessel, this is impacting those as well, those outside of this realm. And I'm not talking, on another planet. I'm talking about, outside of this realm. You've had NDEs. That's kind of how I feel like what that is. Just be prepared that if you wanted to be part of this, that, you know, I want to have the least amount of censorship in the dialogue, because that's part of who we are too. That's how we, if that's how we express ourselves, if it's a colorful expletive, the problem is we aren't allowed to be able to have those. People become hypersensitive and it becomes kind of crazy. I mean, you can say that's an if somebody says something and you say, well, that's effing crazy. Okay, as long as that person's idea is a little out there for you, that's okay. But don't focus your points on that. It's not, if it's not demeaning or disrespectful. I mean, if you called somebody an F and D head, yeah, that would be kind of a problem because now you're focusing on that individual. It has to be kind of looked at in a holistic way. Maybe even asking question to yourself before you say something that, well, why did I think that? Why did I think that was so freaking crazy? And you can kind of rationalize with yourself and then you can come back with a good question why they said that. And that kind of opens the dialogue and you can kind of see others people's perspectives. Does that
Right.
make sense? I mean,
It
I would
does.
love to have that. I would love to have that.
It does. And I can personally say, having been on your show 3 times, I'm used to everyone hearing the principles, and the conversation being, oh, you believe this. Oh, well, that's cool. Yeah. So how did, kind of kid gloving around it and just sharing the experience. But with you, I'd say, the reason I enjoyed coming on the 3 times that I did was you get to be challenged a little bit of, and, go within and go, why do I believe that? Why, is this an ideal that, is so impactful for me, other than just saying, well, yeah, it shaped my life. Well, how did it shape your life? Why did it shape your life? And so you get to share more. And I think there's more growth that comes from that kind of conversation. And never, you talk about being respectful, and, it's like, you don't feel attacked being on the show when you're like, question why you believe something. It's more of going, you're coming at it as the way of saying, well, I like what you're saying, but I don't understand how you got there. How
Right.
did
You
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 get
want an
there?
expansion on how you got to that belief. Right? It's like
Right.
define what you're saying, explain what you mean by that, and it's not saying, "You're wrong, you're full of it, that's why your eyes are brown." I mean, you can get really insulting with it and very, very personally insulting with stuff, and I've seen people do that, and it's like, that's such a waste of time, because then it's gonna make you expand when you are appropriate with the conversation. You can walk away from that. You're gonna like, yeah, that guy's eyes were brown, all right. But what a cool person. What an awesome character. You know what I mean? There are
Right.
good and redeeming facts about most people.
Yeah.
But there's still value. And that's why I say there needs to be more open discussions without judgment, or without being, I should say it this way, without being judgmental, because we all need good judgment. And this is how we make solid decisions for ourselves, if that makes sense.
It does.
Uh,
And so, to end this up, how can people contact you to be on your show and to have these conversations?
I am on Facebook as Auric Vibe 1111, and I have an email. I have to keep life simple, so it's Auric Vibe 1111 at gmail.com. Or you can check out my website. I took down the phone number, but it's auricvibe1111.com. So, yeah, I have to keep life simple.
You make it too simple.
No, it's just remember one thing and you just change the tag on the end. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's all good.
It's
It's all
all
good.
in the description, but I know from reading comments lately is some people will look at and go, how do I find this? And it's like, yeah, I'm sorry. Some people just don't like to read the whole description, so
You know
I'm
what's
putting on the screen. There's her email.
I do a live on Saturday at noon. I'm trying to get it short. It's shorter. If you want to watch the short version, you have to wait for me to post it on Rumble, but I do the live on Saturdays at noon on YouTube. But what's really funny is we had a troll show up. I was so freaking excited. It's like awesome. We have a troll. Boost up those comments, pal. Make them rock. And it's like your next thing you know, they were boom, 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 boom. They were deleting their, they were out of there so fast. It was like, woo.
Yeah, and what's funny is when I first started doing my shows, I would get the trolls and I would be upset going, how could somebody do that? And I was talking to a YouTuber and they go, you got a troll? And I said, yeah. They go, congratulations, you've made it. And I was like, what? They're like, trolls don't just go anywhere. There's a reason that they go. And so it's like, okay, so I'm happy I got trolled, but at the same time, I don't want to be trolled.
I had somebody search me out on Facebook. It's on a different account, but it was really funny because, oh, this person is a sham. They're full of darkness. And I'm going, cool, troll, block. On
Yeah,
Facebook, I'm not tolerating it. But on uh, YouTube, and I think it was on Rumble, somebody made a comment about the interview I had done with Augie Nost. It was about I think it was about the disclosure stuff because we've done stuff on aliens, UFOs, and on AI. And it was interesting because this guy left a really insulting comment. And I was kind of cool. I was kind of cool with it. I said, "Well, thanks for your comment, and appreciate your point of view, but the insults are not appreciated."
yeah,
And I just left it at that, and I don't think they responded to that. I mean, and that's what I mean about having an open and honest discussion. I didn't insult the guy back. I mean, if I were to do it in plain American English, and I would have just said, "Hey, buddy, you're an asshole." And I would have just left it at that, but I'm not going to do that because I did. I appreciated the comment and that there are people out there that don't agree with the content. I appreciate that. That's good. That means that person is searching. Hope you find your platform to land on, buddy, because it's going to be your wings are going to get tired.
yeah. And with that, I think it's time to wrap up this episode, and we'll definitely have to get you back on for another episode and keep going down the rabbit holes and, conversation going where it's going. And so, thank you for coming on, Auric, and I greatly appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate every time you have me on your stuff.
Yeah, we're going to have to work it out again because I don't think we have any appointments set up yet. So
Not yet.
I'm going to be on Typical Skeptic on Friday at 7. So that's going to be kind of a riot. I'm going to do some readings on there, and I usually bend his ear for a hot minute beforehand too, on whatever he's got in his head. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
all. It's always a riot.
yeah. Typical Skeptic is a great podcast to watch if you're looking for stuff to watch beyond my shows.
I don't know. You get some heavy hitters too. I mean, Rob's an animal, so he puts out a lot of content, so it's a lot of fun.
Yeah,
Um,
I
so
can't compete with him. I don't. It's like he puts out 3 or 4 a day, and it's like I have a hard time doing one a day.
you just have to drink more coffee.
There we go. All right, so thank you to everyone who watched and to everyone who commented and asked questions. And thank you to everyone watching and wherever you are in the world. Make it a great day. And so, good morning to you if you're in the morning, good afternoon, good evening, And if you're asleep, feel free to tune in and watch this when you wake up. It'll be a treat for you. It'll definitely wake you up. Let's put it that way. All right. Good night, everyone.